Ever been on a private jet? No? Well, let me tell you a story about my first time. Picture this. I was all set to embark on my maiden voyage in the world of private jet luxury, a realm of champagne wishes and caviar dreams. As I prepared to step into this airborne utopia, I made my first mistake, overpacking. Now, you might think that a private jet is like your personal flying mansion, where you can bring anything and everything. But trust me, it's not. In my enthusiasm, I packed everything but the kitchen sink, convinced that my private jet trip would be incomplete without my collection of Hawaiian shirts, golf clubs, and a hat for every day of the week. After all, you never know when you might need a feathered fedora, right? As I showed up at the tarmac, suitcases in tow, the look on the pilot's face was something between disbelief and sheer terror. I could see him mentally calculating whether the jet would even get off the ground with my luggage weight, a sight that would make Newton roll in his grave. The crew, bless their hearts, had to break it to me gently. Turns out, private jets have weight limitations too. My dreams of a flying walk-in closet were crushed, and I had to make the difficult choice between my lucky golf clubs and my assortment of hats. And so began my crash course in the do's and don'ts of private jet travel. I learned the hard way that overpacking is just one of the 8 cardinal sins of jet setting. Others include arriving late, dressing inappropriately, overindulging in alcohol, ignoring safety instructions, bypassing security procedures, discussing sensitive topics, and leaving a mess. So there I was, suitcase in one hand, dignity in the other. And that, dear friends, is how not to pack for a private jet trip. So, buckle up because we're about to dive into the unseen perils of private jet luxury, because even in the world of caviar dreams there are rules to follow. This is global travel venture. You think being late is fashionable? Try telling that to your private jet pilot. Let me spin you a tale of a high-powered executive, let's call him John. John was known for his punctuality or lack thereof in everything except his board meetings. He thought he'd carry this laissez-faire attitude to his first private jet trip. John sauntered into the airport a cool 30 minutes past the agreed departure time, expecting his jet to be waiting. Instead, he found an empty hangar and a pilot with a face that looked like he'd just bitten into a lemon. John, it turns out, was unaware of a golden rule of private jet travel: the jet waits for no one. John's tardiness had cost him a hefty fee for the delay, not to mention the embarrassment of explaining to his associates why he missed the important meeting in Dubai. Let's just say John's reputation for being fashionably late quickly became unfashionable. So folks, when it comes to private jet travel, being punctual is not just about making a good impression. It's about respect for your crew's time and avoiding unnecessary costs. It's about understanding that the privilege of private jet travel comes with its own set of responsibilities. To wrap it up, let's remember this. On your first private jet trip, or any for that matter, the only thing that should be fashionably late is your cocktail. Cheers to that. Ever heard of the saying, dress for the job you want? Well, in the world of private jets, it's dress for the jet you're on. Picture this. Our friend, let's call him Joe, is all set for his first private jet trip. He's seen the movies, the music videos, the Instagram posts, and he's ready to live the high life. So what does Joe decide to wear? A neon jumpsuit, complete with sky-high platform boots. Because why not, right? Well, as Joe struts his way onto the jet, there's an audible gasp from the crew. Picture the scene, a luxurious cabin, decked out in plush leather and polished wood, and in walks Joe, looking like he's about to run off to a disco right after the flight. The crew, bless their hearts, try to keep a straight face. But every time they offer Joe a beverage or a warm towel, there's a glint of amusement in their eyes. And our friend Joe, he's none the wiser. He's just basking in the glow of his neon jumpsuit, oblivious to the stifled giggles around him. So what's the moral of the story? Private jets, despite their reputation for luxury and indulgence, still require a certain level of decorum, especially when it comes to attire. Remember, you're not just dressing for yourself, but also for the jet, the crew, and the overall experience. So, unless you're planning to parachute out of the jet, leave the jumpsuit at home. Private jets and alcohol, a match made in heaven, right? Well, not always. Picture this, our friend, let's call him Bob, is on his first private jet trip. He's excited, he's nervous, and he's got a minibar full of top-shelf spirits at his fingertips. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Bob, being the life of the party type, decides to make the most of this mile-high happy hour, and by most, I mean he's mixing cocktails faster than a bartender on a Friday night. Before long, Bob's feeling no pain. He's telling jokes, he's singing songs, he's trying to do the moonwalk in a moving aircraft. And that's when things start to go south. Picture a tipsy Bob, sliding across the polished cabin floor like a penguin on ice. It's not pretty, and it's definitely not the dignified private jet experience Bob was hoping for, but it doesn't stop there. Oh no, Bob, in his inebriated wisdom, decides it's a good time to try his hand at being a pilot. Yes, you heard right. He stumbles towards the cockpit, tie askew, declaring he's going to fly this bird. Luckily, the actual pilot, a seasoned professional, manages to gently steer him back to his seat. And so ends Bob's mile-high happy hour. The next morning he wakes up with a pounding headache, a bruised ego, and a newfound respect for the rules of the sky. The moral of the story? Just because you can drink on a private jet doesn't mean you should turn the cabin into your personal cocktail lounge. Moderation is the name of the game here. Yes, enjoy a glass of champagne or a single malt if that's your thing. But remember, altitude can intensify the effects of alcohol, and nobody wants to be the Bob of the flight. So, the next time you're lucky enough to be sipping a gin and tonic at 35,000 feet, do yourself a favor. Keep it classy, keep it moderate, and keep your feet firmly on the cabin floor. Remember, the only thing you should be flying high on a private jet is, well, the jet. Think safety instructions are for the birds? Well, you might just end up joining them if you're not careful. Let's take a journey into the world of our friend. Let's call him Maverick. Maverick is a thrill seeker, an adrenaline junkie. His motto, rules are for other people. So when he found himself aboard his first private jet, he was too busy admiring the leather seats and sipping champagne to pay any mind to the safety instructions. After all, he thought, those are for the folks in economy class, right? Wrong. As fate would have it, turbulence hit. Suddenly champagne flutes were airborne and Maverick, well, he was sliding around like a hockey puck on an ice rink. If only he'd paid attention to those safety instructions about securing loose items and wearing seatbelts during takeoff, landing, and yes, turbulence. To make matters worse, when the oxygen masks dropped, Maverick was left floundering. He'd skipped that part of the safety talk too, and was left gasping like a fish out of water. This cautionary tale brings us to a valuable lesson. Safety isn't just for economy class, it's for everyone. Whether you're flying private or commercial, first class or economy, safety instructions are there to keep you, well, safe. So, unless you fancy a mid-air game of find the emergency exit, pay attention to the safety instructions. Think security procedures are a drag? Try explaining that to the private jet security team. Let's rewind a bit to that time when a first-time jetsetter, let's call him Bob, decided that security procedures were more of a suggestion than a rule. Bob, brimming with the excitement of his inaugural private jet trip, had visions of breezing past the security lines and strutting straight onto his awaiting jet. But oh dear Bob, how wrong he was. Now picture this. Bob saunters up to the security checkpoint, suitcase in hand, sporting a grin that would make the Cheshire Cat jealous. He's asked to open his suitcase and his grin fades faster than a sunset. Unbeknownst to Bob, private jet security is not just a walk in the park. He opens his suitcase, revealing a collection that would give an antique dealer a run for his money. From a vintage brass lamp to a rather curious-looking cactus in a pot, Bob had it all. The security team was, to put it mildly, perplexed. As Bob tried to explain his eclectic collection, he was met with a firm reminder that security procedures apply to private jets as much as they do to commercial flights. The cactus, unfortunately, didn't make the cut. So, what's the moral of the story here? No matter how luxurious your ride, security is not to be taken lightly. Private jets, contrary to what some may believe, are not immune to the rules and regulations. In fact, they are often more stringent. Just imagine how much smoother Bob's trip could have been if he'd simply followed the security procedures. He could have been sipping champagne in the sky instead of explaining his plant choices to a bemused security officer. Don't be like Bob. Embrace the security procedures and remember, they're there for your safety. So next time you're packing for a private jet trip, remember to leave your collection of curiosities at home. Remember, the only thing that should be taking off on a private jet trip is the jet, not your security sense. Think a private jet is the perfect place for gossip? Think again. Picture this. You're cruising at 30,000 feet, sipping on some top-shelf bubbly, and feeling the freedom of the open skies. It's tempting to let loose, get cozy, and treat the cabin like your own personal confessional, but remember folks, a private jet is not your local watering hole. Let's consider the tale of Bob, a high-flying executive with a taste for juicy gossip. One day Bob finds himself sharing a private jet with a fellow business mogul, Jane. As the jet takes off, Bob, feeling relaxed in the plush leather seats, decides to spill the beans about a secret merger his company's planning. Bob, you see, has forgotten one crucial detail: the cabin crew. They're not just there to serve your favorite cocktail, they're professionals, trained to keep an ear out for any potential issues. And, well, loose lips sink ships, and private jets. As Bob animatedly shares his confidential news, the flight attendant, with her keen hearing, picks up every word. Now she's not one to gossip, but it's her duty to report any potential concerns. So she does what any responsible crew member would do: she informs her superiors about the conversation she overheard. Fast forward a few days, and Bob's secret merger is splashed all over the business headlines, much to his shock and dismay. He's left wondering how his secret got out, completely oblivious to his high-altitude indiscretion. So what's the moral of this high-flying cautionary tale? Discretion, my friends, is not just a virtue, it's an absolute necessity when you're cruising in the lap of luxury. A private jet brings with it an air of exclusivity, but it's not a private bubble. The walls, or rather the cabin walls, have ears. Remember to keep your conversations light, your secrets secure, and your business dealings firmly on the ground. After all, you never know who might be listening. So, unless you want your secrets flying at 30,000 feet, keep the chit-chat light. Think you can leave a mess on a private jet? You're in for a rude awakening. Picture this. A gentleman, let's call him Tim, is on his first private jet journey. Tim, having a ball of a time, decides to treat the cabin like his personal playground. He's got half-eaten gourmet sandwiches scattered about, champagne glasses teetering dangerously on plush cushions, and a trail of glossy magazines strewn on the floor like breadcrumbs. Now, Tim is no slob in his day-to-day life, but the excitement of his first private jet ride turned him into a kid in a candy store. And like a kid in a candy store, he's blissfully ignorant of the chaos he's created. The flight concludes. Tim, grinning from ear to ear, disembarks, leaving the cabin resembling a frat house after a particularly wild party. As he steps off the jet, he turns to give one last wave to the crew. But instead of the warm smiles he expects, he's met with glares that could freeze the sun. You see, in the world of private aviation, cleanliness isn't just a courtesy, it's an unwritten rule. The crew isn't there to clean up after you like hotel maids. They're there to ensure your safety and comfort during the flight. So, our friend Tim, he learns a valuable lesson. The next time he steps foot on a private jet, he leaves only footprints. And not on the leather seats, mind you. You might be thinking, but it's a private jet. I'm paying for it, I can do what I want. Well, yes and no. Sure, it's your dime, but that doesn't mean you can treat the cabin like a dumpster. Think about it. Would you like to be greeted by a mess left by the previous passenger on your next flight? Didn't think so. In the end, it's about respect. Respect for the crew, respect for the next passenger, and respect for the luxurious experience that is private aviation. So, when you're lucky enough to find yourself on a private jet, don't be a Tim. Remember, the only thing you should be leaving behind on a private jet is your fear of flying. So, ready for your first private jet trip? Here's a quick recap. Stick to the essentials for packing. Punctuality is your new best friend, and remember, it's not a pajama party up there. Avoid treating the in-flight bar as an all-you-can-drink buffet. And remember, safety instructions aren't just for show. Security procedures? Yep, they apply to you too. Keep the sensitive chatter to a minimum, and the cabin? Leave it as sparkling as you found it. And that, dear friends, is how you avoid becoming the punchline of the private jet world. Until next time, safe travels.